is Citizen Weekend with Olive Ballows.
A very good evening to you. You're right in time for Citizen Weekend. And tonight we get into the Israel-Palestine divide. Kenya reiterated its recognition of the Palestinian state during this week's UNGA, that is the UN General Assembly 80th Summit. And it first did so in 1989. Several U.S. Western allies did so as well, but the U.S. held firm, as did Netanyahu, for whose address was walked out on by delegates at UNGA. But even as Kenya recognized the Palestinian state, or reiterated its recognition of the Palestinian state, it does hold close diplomatic ties with Israel. We cooperate in the areas of agriculture, we cooperate in the areas of security. So, which way Kenya, the civil society, has demanded a stronger statement with regard to the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And I will get into that with my panelists this evening. We have Professor Michael Bishku, who is a Professor Emeritus of History and Anthropology at Augustus University. We'll also have Irungu Houghton, who is Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. The highlights. It was a road accident. Autopsy determines policeman Kennedy Mutuku's cause of death in Haiti, hours after body arrived.
Mimi nataka kuambia Uhuru Kenyatta, usitukumbushe sera zako ama manifesto ya Jubilee ambaye ilitunyanyasa. Wewe nenda kimya, wacha Kenya iende mbele.
You dug us into this hole. President Ruto's allies tell off former President Kenyatta, saying Ruto is clearing Kenyatta's mess.
And this is not the way to run a nation. It cannot be like that. We have institutions here. Ambazo zingine zimetekwa nyara.
Opposition leaders ask Kenyans to prepare to vote out President Ruto, saying he is not capable of running the country.
Sasa minajiuliza hii miezi mbili tunakaa hapa nje. Tutakula nini?
Destructive rains. Kericho tea farmers hit hard by hailstorms. Our sign language interpreter tonight is none other than Yula Nzale. Kennedy Mutuku Nzuve, the Kenyan police officer who died while on duty in Haiti, succumbed to injuries sustained in a road accident. An autopsy conducted a day after his body was repatriated to Kenya on Friday confirmed Mutuku's cause of death as reported by the police, bringing to an end nearly a month of uncertainty and anguish for his family. Officer Nzuve died on August the 31st while serving in the United Nations-backed multinational security support mission to Haiti. He becomes the third Kenyan officer to lose his life since the deployment of Kenyan forces to the Caribbean. Citizen TV's Ben Kirui kicks us off on Citizen Weekend.
His remains arrived at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to a heavy and emotional atmosphere. The body of Kennedy Mutuku Nzuve, the Kenyan police officer who died while on a peacekeeping mission in Haiti, was received by his grieving family, friends and colleagues. The somber silence and distraught expressions reflected the deep anguish the family has endured since his death on August 31st.
It has really been a tough moment for us, but we are trusting God that will give us the peace that we deserve so that we can complete the journey to give our brother and our son and our friend a good send-off.
Though still struggling to come to terms with his sudden demise, the family expressed a sense of relief, saying the return of his remains allows them to begin burial preparations, a step toward finding closure.
It is now a bit relief for us as a family because there have been so many speculations all over that maybe it's not there, it's not coming. But finally, because all along we have been communicating with the National Police Service about the fate, and finally we say that it has been a relief for us today
Following a brief requiem mass led by clergy from the Administration Police Service, Officer Nzuve's body was transferred to Chiromo Mortuary. The family has appealed to the government to fully cover the funeral expenses.
Procedurally, it is the government through the National Police Service that organized for bringing of the body all the way up to here. We are also extending the same request as we prepare for a send-off. I'm very sure the government will also chip in.
Nzuve is among 3 Kenyan police officers who have lost their lives while deployed to Haiti as part of the UN-backed multinational security support mission. He died when an armored vehicle overturned during an operation in Port-au-Prince. The other fallen officers are 31-year-old Samuel Kaitwai, who was laid to rest in March, and Benedict Kabiru, whose body is yet to be repatriated. Chief Government Pathologist Johnson Oduor conducted the autopsy, finding that Mutuku succumbed to multiple injuries sustained in a road accident. The remains of the late Officer Nzuve have been preserved at Chiromo Mortuary ahead of his interment scheduled for Thursday next week. A day after his remains were repatriated, family members visited this facility for body identification and to witness autopsy examination. Ben Kiroi, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The State Department for Lands and Physical Planning has absolved itself from blame in the dispute surrounding the 2,600 acres of land in Kibiko, Kajiado County. A statement released on Saturday read that any action taken by the State Department and its mandated officers in relation to the land have been lawful and done as per the court's direction. This comes a day after a section of members of the Maasai community affiliated with the Kikonyokie Community Trust staged protests in Nairobi, accusing senior officials in the ministry of illegal issuance of title deeds and subdivision of the contested property. Safin Acheng Ouma with more.
A 2,682 acres parcel of land located in Ngong, Kajiado County remains at the center of controversy for close to a decade, with 2 rival factions of the Kikonyokie Community Trust now claiming rightful authority over its management. On Friday, one faction staged protests accusing senior officials at the Ministry of Lands of being behind the illegal issuance of title deeds and subdivision of the contested property. Actions allegedly carried out in defiance of a court order barring any dealings on the land.
And these cartels are people who have actually been manipulating the ownership of this land. And today we wanted to let him know that we are not happy as the community there, because the cartels have decided to come out and collude with the people who are in Lands Department.
The State Department for Lands and Physical Planning has refuted those allegations, highlighting deep leadership wrangles that have escalated the tension, with a list of trustees to the land being adjusted severally between 2012, when its lease was first registered, to June 2024. The statement listed a series of court cases filed in relation to the protracted land dispute, maintaining that it has followed due process in any dealings relating to the land, following the direction of the court on every legal matter that was raised. The State Department for Lands says this is after parties involved refused to take part in a mediation process initiated by the department and the leadership of Kajiado County, and that they insisted on a court settlement. The department has termed the Friday protest malicious and aimed at hoodwinking the public. They are calling on any aggrieved party to seek redress in court. Safin Acheng Ouma, Citizen TV.
The Deputy President, Kithure Kindiki, led pro-government leaders who tore into former President Uhuru Kenyatta for criticizing President William Ruto's leadership during Friday's Jubilee Party National Delegates Conference. Speaking in northern Kenya and the Ukambani region, the leaders blamed the former head of state for what they said was driving the economy into an economic crisis through securing huge commercial loans and investing in financially unsustainable projects that crippled, they say, the economy. With more is Seth Olale.
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta's criticism and comparison of President William Ruto's performance to his has been dismissed as dishonest and cheap propaganda aimed towards undermining his successor. Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, who led Kenya Kwanza Alliance leaders in slamming the Jubilee Party leader, urged Kenyans to ignore naysayers by assessing gains made by President William Ruto. Kindiki acted by Kenyatta's view that Linda Mama was among gains made that had been eroded.
Hiyo Linda Mama ambayo ilikuwa inachunga mambo ya wamama wajawazito, sasa tumeipanua kupitia SHA. Sio Linda Mama pekee, inalinda mama, inalinda mzee, inalinda kijana.
At an empowerment rally in Dadaab, Garissa County, leaders who accompanied the deputy president accused the former head of state of dragging the country into a bottomless economic pit by securing huge commercial loans and investing in financially unsustainable projects.
Ndugu yetu Uhuru Kenyatta, you have moral obligation to respect the office of the president.
The condemnation of former President Uhuru Kenyatta played out in Ukambani, Nairobi, Uasin Gishu and Nandi counties, where Kenya Kwanza leaders told the former head of state to keep off politics.
The truth is, I am sure deep in your heart, you are shocked that William Ruto has managed to stabilize the economy of this country.
Uliogopa maneno ya housing, uliogopa hii maneno yote, kubadilisha maneno ya mazomo nini, sasa ida kusumbua kichwa unaona mwingine anafanya.
Wewe nenda kimya, wacha Kenya iende mbele.
We have not told Kenyans you are the problem. Tulikuwa tunajaribu kulipa madeni ambayo wao ulikopa.
You are a part and a parcel of the mess that Kenya is undergoing. You cannot run away.
Speaking in Karachuonyo, Homa Bay County, during a church service, ODM through its chairperson Gladys Wanga called on the former president to remain neutral in politics.
We expect that those who call themselves the opposition can point out the kind of issues that the former president was made to talk about, but not to have the president himself, the former president himself, dragged into partisan politics.
Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has criticized President William Ruto's administration, which he says is failing to address Kenya's mounting challenges. Kalonzo, who attended a church service in Nairobi, urged the church to lead the way in guiding the nation. With more is Miriam Nyambura.
Opposition leaders Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa attended the grand opening of the Born Again Evangelism Church in Ruai, Nairobi, where they continued to hit out at the government for failing to address the everyday struggles of Kenyans.
And this is not the way to run a nation. It cannot be like that. We have institutions here ambazo zingine zimetekwa nyara, zingine zimeharibika. Wananchi wa Kenya wanakuwa, heshima yao inaregeshwa, inakuwa reduced to the extent that unaona wewe uende ukaombe pesa kwa mheshimiwa rais. Haiwezekani.
Kalonzo also firing salvos at the current regime over the killings witnessed since the anti-government demonstrations. He says that Nepal is a shining example of what Kenya should strive for.
Kwa hivyo we have to change it. We have to mean, na hiyo change lazima ianze kwa mafikira yetu. Sisi wenyewe tuanze kuchange. Niseme never again shall we hear, kwa mfano akisema 40 tribes against one tribe. It will never happen again. We're all Kenyans.
So tunataka hii kura inayokuja mjue ya kwamba integrity will be on the ballot. We must have a God-fearing leader who has a clean record, asiye na damu mikononi mwake, ama ufisadi, ama wizi, ama ukabila.
With the continuous voter registration exercise by the IEBC set to commence on Monday, the opposition leaders rallied Kenyans to take advantage and register as voters. Miriam Nyambura, Citizen TV.
Maternal deaths in Kenya remain among the highest in the region. The cracks in the country's healthcare system continue to cost lives. Delays in emergency response, understaffed facilities, and shortages of critical supplies like blood and ambulances leads to the death of mothers. However, they do not only impact the immediate family, but the entire community. Emily Chebet brings us the story of a 27-year-old mother's death at birth and the impact it has left on a grieving husband and 3 little girls, a tragedy that echoes the pain of many families and the urgent call to fix a broken system.
At the foot of the Aberdare Hills, a heavy cloud lingers. The silence in this homestead is deafening. 35-year-old Samuel Mborothi from Wanjohi, Nyandarua County walks slowly to his late wife's resting place. This is his first time back here since he laid her to rest just 3 weeks ago. Fresh flowers rest gently on the mound of soil that now covers the late 27-year-old Eunice Njoki Mborothi. A devoted mother of 3 little girls, her life was cut short while giving life to her youngest on the 30th of August 2025.
Tukiwa pale Kayole 2, vile huyu nasi alikuwa anasema harakisheni hiyo ambulance. Niliona wife yangu hapa hivi ameanza kutani yellow. Eunice mama Lucy alika less than 1 hour. Ndio watu waambie ameniacha.
Samuel says the system failed him. His wife never missed a clinic. Every scan was done. And when the time came, medics at Kayole 2 level 4 assured him they were ready for her delivery.
Kwanza nilimuuliza demu wangu umemuona aje, umempima umemuona aje? Akaniambia, kwanza aliniambia huyu ako the best. Juu ako 5-6 symptoms na maji shatoka. Kwa hivyo we can hope the best by tomorrow.
Eunice delivered a healthy baby girl, but almost immediately developed complications. Doctors had known of risks as early as her 3rd month of pregnancy, and she was monitored closely. She approached her delivery date with a clean bill of health.
Nikauliza nurse, what's going on? Juu niliona bed iko lent. Unaona? Eunice akaniuliza mtoto wangu ako wapi? Nikamwambia mtoto ako pale. Hiyo nurse nikamuuliza nini kinaendelea. Kaniambia Eunice amebleed lakini imeitisha ambulance more than 20 minutes na haijafika.
The lack of ambulances, blood banks, adequate personnel, and in rural areas, even basic infrastructure continue to drive up maternal and child mortality in Kenya. Professor Moses Obimbo, who leads the End Postpartum Hemorrhage Initiative, says the country is in dire need of more blood in the blood banks, noting that nearly 60% of all blood collected is used by mothers during childbirth.
Out of the 5 to 10 women that die every day, 40% of them die because there was no blood for blood transfusion. And it turns out that in this country we need about 550,000 units of blood every year. We are only able to donate about 150,000 to 200,000 at best. So we are about 30 to 40% capacity. Some data actually shows we only 16%. So it means we are in a blood crisis.
Behind every statistic is a family torn apart. Samuel's father has been forced to remain alone here as his wife, once the matriarch of the rural home, leaves for the city. Her now days consumed with caring for the children her late daughter-in-law left behind.
Nasikia moyo wangu sugu sana. Hii kazi ni kubwa ama si Mungu wako, si yako tu. Hii atatusaidia ile anataka kutusaidia.
Samuel, who does menial work at Nairobi's Marikiti market, now carries an immense responsibility. He cannot afford to hire house help, and with a newborn who never got a chance to breastfeed, he relies on formula milk. At 1,800 shillings a tin, the cost is already taking a heavy toll on him.
Kama watoto makitoka shule makaniambia ako wapi mamu, alafu ninape mtoto wangu maziwa kwa nini na mama wako wapi.
2 years ago, Mary Njehia lost her only sister during childbirth. She and her husband were forced to raise the baby alongside their own 3 children.
Venye nilienda clinic, unaambiwa upite hapa, nilianza kulia na nikauliza Mungu kwa nini mimi? Mtoto akigonjeka, nilikuwa nalia, but hakuna mtu alikuwa anajua. Hata saa hii ndio nimeanza kuongea.
Samuel's and Mary's stories expose a recurring loophole in Kenya's healthcare system. Delayed referrals. Too often, patients are held for too long, only to be discharged with papers claiming they left alive, even as they die minutes later at referral hospitals. What follows is a circle of blame.
Kulikuwa na manasi wengine kama 4, 5 hivi, lakini hakuna kitu wanafanya. Either they were student, juu anasaidia Eunice na anawekewa simu loudspeaker aongee.
The ratio of doctor to the patient is about 1.5 per every 1,000. The WHO recommends 44 per every 1,000. So you can imagine one doctor or one midwife or one nurse needs to see 1,000 patients. So we need to train more doctors. But as we're training them, there's a paradox. We are training doctors who are not being employed.
Alienda na miguu yake, alafu akarudi ako kwa jeneza.
Professor Bimbo and his team at the End PPH initiative have introduced a mobile blood bank system. Volunteers are tested, their blood group stored in a database, and whenever an emergency arises, they are called to the nearest facility to help save a life.
Eunice's story ends here, but it is the beginning of a bigger conversation. Postpartum hemorrhage remains the leading cause of maternal deaths in Kenya. Those championing to end PPH are clear. This should not be happening. Not in Kenya, not in the 21st century. Emily Chebet, Citizen TV in Nyandarua County.
And the questions persist. Residents of Kericho are counting massive losses after a heavy hailstorm battered the area, destroying thousands of acres of tea, coffee and other crops. Tea factories have been the hardest hit, with production reduced by nearly 50%. Crispin Otieno has the details.
For nearly a week, heavy rains have swept through different parts of Kericho. Hailstones of considerable size have been pounding farms and homesteads, leaving behind a trail of destruction worth millions. In Roret, tea farmer Linus Langat was left in shock as his lifelong investment was reduced to ruins. Fields shredded, roofs damaged, residents forced to run for safety.
Shamba langu iliharibiwa sana na mawe kiasi ya kunipotezea takriban kilo 10,000 ambacho kila mwezi mimi huwa nikichuna na wafanyakazi wangu. Mimi niko na wafanyakazi 18.
Sasa mimi najiuliza, hii miezi 2 tunakaa hapa nje, tutakula nini? Sasa watu yetu hata nyumbani wajui mvua inanyesha. Sasa mimi nategemea ijai hata wakisi yetu. Sasa nimefanya mwaka moja na miezi 5 hapa kwa Linus.
Langat and Isoi are among hundreds of farmers whose livelihoods now hang in the balance.
Mimea yote ikaisha, maharagwe, ndizi, kila kitu iliisha, na hata mpaka sasa mawe bado iko. Na tumeona ya kwamba serikali utusaidie kwa sababu tumeadhiriwa sana na kila kitu.
Sisi kama wafanya biashara wa mananasi, sisi hatuna kitu ya kutegemea sasa. Sisi tuko na shida kubwa. Sasa mananasi yenye tulikuwa tunauza hakuna kwa shamba iliisha.
Tea factories have also been dealt a heavy blow, with the output slashed by half. Among the hardest hit areas include Roret, Ishara Ward, Tuluet, Mapasi, Reresik, Kapchilash, and Cheboror. Crispino Otieno, Citizen TV.
All right, we take a break on Citizen Weekend, but when we come back, we get into the Israel-Palestine divide. I'll be joined by the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya, Irungu Houghton. We'll also be joined by Professor Michael Bishku, who is a Professor Emeritus of Professor of History and archaeology as well as African history. So he will be joining us as well. And we will be joined by Ayub Abdikadir, who has the latest out of what came out of Unga 80. What recognition of Palestine by Kenya and U.S. Western allies at UN General Assembly means for Middle East peace and the Gaza humanitarian crisis. All right, welcome back to Citizen Weekend. As promised, we're getting into the Israel-Palestine divide. And as promised, I have in studio Irungu Houghton, who is the Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya. We're also joined from Georgia in the U.S. by Professor Michael Bishku, Professor Emeritus Middle Eastern and African History, Augusta University. I will start with you. Irungu, perhaps you can give us an idea of what the humanitarian situation is in Gaza now, because you've called for a stronger statement from the Kenyan authorities. So President William Ruto reiterated the 1989 recognition of the Palestinian state, but as civil society, do you say that is not enough?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just let me start with the humanitarian, the human rights situation. I mean, of course, we know from, next month will be the second anniversary of the bombardment of Gaza, and we've lost, 65,000 people have been killed. Today, 91 people were killed, and these are people who are largely defenseless. They're not carrying arms. They are essentially being killed by the aerial and the ground assault on Gaza at the moment. So the situation is just dire. We haven't even started talking about the famine and the
So
collapse.
this is 65,000 since October the 7th?
Yes, 2 years ago,
okay.
Since the bombardment started. So I think the situation is very dire, and I think that's what's tipped the diplomatic offensive away from Israel and the United States of America. But I think what we have been saying is that the recognition of Israel is complementary. I think now we're up to about 157 states out of 193 that have recognized the state of Palestine. However, it means nothing to the people who are starving, who are being denied medical health, who are being bombed, and those who are being essentially treated to one of the worst humanitarian disasters I think we've seen, in several years. I mean, I think Sudan is a matter of concern at the moment, but Gaza is something that Kenyans need to be paying attention. So we're calling on people to go beyond the recognition. The states must go beyond recognizing. They must begin to call for the unlawful an end to the unlawful occupation of Palestinian territories. They must stop the bombardment of Gaza. They must allow for a humanitarian corridor. And lastly, we have to see an end to the apartheid system that is essentially being imposed on the people of Palestine.
All right, and I'll ask you to explain that a bit more. But Professor, let me bring you in now. We've seen several Western allies, U.S. Western allies, France, Britain, Canada, Australia, Belgium, formally recognize the Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly. Why now?
I think it's mostly because of what's happened since the ceasefire earlier on this year, that the fighting has gotten far worse. And some of these states say, well, it can't go on indefinitely, that, yes, a lot of countries are committed to a two-state solution, but are they really showing it in their actions?
All right. They're committed to a two-state solution, but are they showing it in their actions? Did you expect much to come out of UNGA? I know there was an attempt to pass a resolution on a ceasefire. The U.S. vetoed it. What did you expect, or what were you anticipating would come out of the UN General Assembly?
I don't know if anything will come out of the UN, but recently Tony Blair had a program that's been, in the last couple of days, Witkoff's picked up on it, a 21-point plan that also includes participation of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. That has been, for Prime Minister Netanyahu, something that he would never accept, unfortunately, but maybe he'll be pressured by President Trump, who seems to be coming around to that.
All right, because we heard President Trump say that he would not allow the annexation of the West Bank, for instance. Do you think that this recognition is applying pressure, and that could be the purpose?
I don't think that they will annex the West Bank, because there is a great deal of opposition within Israel itself, outside of the government. and they don't want to take on that burden. And so I don't believe that will happen anyway. It's kind of a bluff on Netanyahu's part, and also a way to keep some of the more extreme elements in his cabinet contented.
All right. So on the humanitarian situation, a report recently released talked about corporations that are benefiting in the West Bank, if I understand it correctly, and you want countries to take action against these corporations.
I mean, I think we have to now call for an economic boycott of Israeli products, and also for a censure of those companies. There are many multinational companies that have essentially been profiting, or as we would say, have made a killing out of the war in Gaza. 1 week ago, Amnesty International released a report on 15 multinational companies, and they include big companies like Boeing, for example. And what we've been arguing is that there are companies that are essentially making money. They are essentially profiting from the violence that we've seen, and that has to stop. Well, just to give you an example, there are companies that sell surveillance technology. They sell intelligence, hardware. They sell computers. They sell, in some cases, even the case of, I think, Airbnb. We've been very concerned about the use of Airbnb in parts of the West Bank where there has been occupation, where Palestinians have been essentially ejected from their land. These are occupied Palestinian territories, and there are companies that are using their services to essentially market properties that have just been taken over by Israelis, and they shouldn't be doing that. So I think we've been arguing that this has to stop.
All right. So we spoke yesterday, and you said you were putting together a flotilla?
No, I was actually thinking about it, and maybe as Kenyans are listening to us this evening, one of the most exciting things I think that has happened in the last few weeks or so is we're starting to see ordinary citizens going way beyond where their governments are willing to go, and just declaring that they are going to provide humanitarian support. And of course, it's just symbolic. It can never deal with the hundreds of thousands of people that need the assistance that they do. But I think what's exciting is that citizens are saying, well, I'm going to Gaza, right? And what we're starting to see now is governments having to protect their citizens from going in. I think the Spanish government have done that recently. And I said, wouldn't it be a good time for Kenyans to float a flotilla?
All right. Professor...
Actually, probably not a flotilla. Let's go for a dhow.
Okay. All right. Professor Bishku, recently, do you think public sentiment in the U.S. is shifting? We've seen Kamala Harris out and about promoting her new book, and she's been shouted down by people in the audience who are raising the U.S. position and the position they took even as a Biden-Harris administration on the question of Palestine. Is a public sentiment shifting, as Irungu has pointed out?
Yes, that's pretty evident. In the Democratic Party, it's more evident than in the Republican Party. And I think much of it has taken place since, okay, you have a ceasefire early on in the year, and you think that it's going to go towards a cessation of hostilities and more negotiations, and it hasn't gone that way, quite the opposite. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is blamed, even in Israel itself, for perpetuating this war and not caring much about the hostages. That, putting the speakers up, projecting into Gaza is very much a stunt on his part. That a number of the people who were actually abducted by Hamas were people who were sympathetic to the Palestinians.
All right. And Kenya is among countries that have reiterated their recognition of the Palestinian state. You've written about the relationship that East Africa has had with Israel, for instance. And one of the things you point out is that we have a history of cooperation in the area of agriculture and in the area of security. Do you expect Kenya, let's talk about Kenya's case, do you expect Kenya to, do as Irungu and the civil society are calling for, a strongly worded statement condemning the atrocities that have been committed in Gaza?
I think it could go both ways. It could condemn more strongly, as was the case during the midst of the war, but at the same time cooperate. Because if you look at a country, an Arab country, the United Arab Emirates, business as usual. And a lot of the African countries have dealt with Israel over a number of years, despite criticizing them in the UN, especially on the Palestinian issue. So I think some of that cooperation will go on. For example, Kenya is very much concerned about security coming over from Somalia. The Israelis are pretty strong in agricultural expertise, and a lot of these African countries are receptive to it.
All right. So is the situation the same for Tanzania and Uganda?
I think Uganda has been the most critical of Israel of the three. And it's hard to say with regard to Uganda what might happen. In the case of Kenya and Tanzania, probably will continue to cooperate to a degree and maybe out in public criticize Israel at the same time.
All right. And, I asked this question of Professor Bishko, and I'll ask it of you. Did you expect much to come out of the UN General Assembly, this 80th summit?
Yeah. Well, a week ago, there were upwards of 2,000 people in Uhuru Park. And many of us, we were very conscious that was the week that the UNGA was taking place. And it was important that we actually demonstrate very clearly what are, I guess, the pro-people positions that the government should take. And we heard, the Secretary General, for example, of the United Democratic Alliance. We heard several MPs. We heard religious leaders say that they want the government to go beyond statements. They don't want just statements. They want to review the relationship with the embassy, for example. And it's important to recognize that actually, the issue is not really an issue against the Israeli people. It's not against the state per se, but it is against the practice of the state in the context of the occupied Palestinian territories. And what we've been saying essentially is that the international community must do a number of things. First of all, there must be a comprehensive arms embargo. Now, we did not get to a point primarily because of the obstacles that the United States is generating at the level of the Security Council. But we need to see a comprehensive arms embargo. We need also to see targeted sanctions on specific Israeli senior commanders and political leaders. And if it goes into the cabinet, that would be important. And I think the last one is that people, consumers, need to start boycotting Israeli products and those companies that are essentially complicit with the genocide we're seeing in Gaza. That's what we need to see of the international community right now. And I think the pressure will continue as, unfortunately, it seems that the Israeli Defense Forces have no barriers. They have no guardrails. They are continuing to bombard Gaza and seem to be very clear that they want to actually erase Palestine from the map.
All right. Professor Bishko has the last word. What do you anticipate? How will this move forward, this conflict?
It's hard to say. As a Middle East historian, I don't know how it's going to end this conflict if Prime Minister Netanyahu is in power. With probably the most right-wing government in Israeli history. And so it needs to have pressure coming from the United States. Unfortunately, President Trump has exerted far less pressure than even President Biden did in the past. And so it all depends on if there's confidence, some of the Arab governments that get along with Israel are willing to cooperate in some sort of peacekeeping operation in Gaza, that this might bring it a little bit more forward.
All right, thank you for speaking to us this evening. That is Professor Michael Bishku, Professor Emeritus, Middle Eastern and African History, Augusta University. We've also had in studio Irungu Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya. It's a situation we continue to keep an eye on, so I hope to continue engaging you gentlemen as we move forward. All right, we take a break, but Citizen Weekend continues on the other side. Comprehensive medical services. Each month, one of the 4 specialists travels to where the mothers are, bringing critical care closer to those who need it most. Mashima Kapombe highlights the situation in Homa Bay.
Once a month, one of only 4 gynecologists in Homa Bay County braves the journey to reach expectant mothers in remote villages. Sometimes that journey means boarding a boat, heading to one of the 16 islands scattered across Lake Victoria. Dr. Vincent Odwor, the CEO of the Homa Bay Maternity Referral Hospital, is also a dedicated gynecologist. For him, there are no exceptions. He is one of just 4 serving the entire county.
We have divided the sub-counties amongst ourselves. Besides the county referral hospital where I'm based, I may also cover Mbita as well as, that is Suba North. We have specific days where a given gynecologist will go to a given sub-county.
The practice started in late 2023 with a mission to reach high-risk expectant mothers in remote areas, women who needed a consultant's review but could only get it if the doctor came to them.
High-risk mothers constitute of mothers who have problems in terms to anemia. Those people with elevated blood pressure are actually suffering. They can actually merge or get whether the patient is actually hypertensive or not.
The outreaches feature both personal and group reviews, ensuring expectant mothers understand their conditions, keep up with antenatal clinics, and face no delays when it comes to childbirth.
So we usually encourage them that when they are now closer to their expected date of delivery, we usually advise them to come closer to a facility that has theatre, especially for those who may deliver in theatre.
Mary Nakumicha, a resident here, appreciates the regular visits by healthcare workers to the island. But with her lived experience, she hopes for even more support.
2015 nilipitia kama nataka kujifungua mtoto wangu. Ilibidi mume wangu atafute vile anasanipeleka town, lakini ilishindikana. Ilibidi nizae kwa nyumba. Na bahati mzuri Mungu alinisaidia nikajifungua poa. Sasa wanawake wa hapa na wanaume tunaomba mtuletee hata ka hospitali hapa kwa shule, tuko na shule, tuko na shamba hapa ya shule, tunaweza kujengea ka hospitali katusaidie.
The outreaches are part of the Maternal and Perinatal Death Surveillance and Response, MPDSR, a tool being rolled out across counties, with one goal: to eliminate maternal and newborn deaths.
The most important part of it being the R, the response. Like the other day, we got a mother from this area. There was a delay, and this mother nearly lost her life. That's why we've come here as a team to do a follow-up.
The highest cause of maternal mortality here in Homa Bay is actually PPH, but right now the rising one is on eclampsia, which is high blood pressure.
For mothers in Homa Bay County, the information shared at health facilities or by the lake during those monthly consultant visits is the power they need to make life-saving choices, ensuring they live to see their babies and their families thrive. Mashirima Kapombe, Citizen TV.
The Mseto Campus Tour by Radio Citizen made a stop at Kisii University as the Nyanza tour entered its second day. Powered by Safaricom, Pepsi and Joy Millers, Radio Citizen presenters engaged students in fun activities, including showcasing their culinary skills live on stage. Students also got the chance to learn about affordable internet platforms through Be Live on Safaricom.
Ujumbe mkubwa sana ambao tumeleta katika chuo hiki kikuu cha Kisii. Pia tumepata kutembea na kampuni kubwa ya Pepsi ambao vile vile ni watengenezaji wa vinywaji kama vile Mirinda, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, na kuna kile kinywaji ambao walipata kuzindua juzi, kinywaji cha Sting. Kwa hivyo nasema kwamba wasikilizaji wetu, sisi lengo letu kubwa kama Radio Citizen Chemichemi kweli ni kuhakikisha kuwa tunapata kutangamana na vijana na jamii kwa ujumla.
The young person wants to browse in terms of time. So we have been able to create Be Live, which helps them to browse in terms of minutes. So I can browse for 1 hour, I can browse for 1.5 hours at a very reduced cost. The same thing we have done for voice. On the voice side as well, they are able to use to go into *444# and they are able to use minutes.
Tumekuja hapa kutangamana na wakazi wa Kisii. Kutoka jana tumekuwa na wao tukichangamkia hii unga yetu ya Raha Premium, na pia tukiwaeleza vile wanaweza ipata kwa urahisi. Tumefika Kisii, tuko kwa kila duka ambayo iko karibu na wewe. Ukienda kwa supermarket unaipata, ukienda kwa duka za houses unapata Raha Premium.
Omba sana kwa imani, ili sije kuondokee. Ukitaka biashara yako, iende vile unataka. Omba sana kwa imani.
The church must take its rightful place in society to inspire both spiritual renewal and improved daily living. This was the message emphasized at Mount Zion KAG in Nakuru. And speaking during his ordination service, Reverend David Nganga urged the church to continue praying for the nation and to take its rightful place in transforming the lives of Kenyans. The service, presided over by Bishop Joseph Mungai of KAG Nakuru, brought together clergy, congregants and community leaders. Reverend Nganga, who has been serving as the Resource Mobilization Chair for KAG Kenya, was officially elevated to the office of Reverend. In his address, Bishop Mungai noted that the ordination comes at a defining moment as the nation grapples with unemployment, food insecurity and other challenges.
Tutaendelea kuiombea hii nafasi ambayo tumepewa na Bwana. Tutakabidhi kwa Bwana ili kanisa liweze kusimama mahali ambapo linastahili kusimama na liweze kutenda mambo ambayo Mungu ametupatia na ametubarikia.
Amepandishwa cheo wakati ambapo kumekuwa na shida nyingi katika nchi. Ukosefu wa ajira, chakula, mambo mengi. Lakini tunataka kuamini kwamba Mungu humuinua mtu wake kwa ajili ya wakati kama huu.
Thank you for staying with us on Citizen Weekend. Let's get into the sports news. And Kenya Police FC will be out to complete the job when they face Somali side Mogadishu FC on Sunday at the Nyayo National Stadium in a CAF Champions League preliminary tie. The Kenya side hold a 3-1 advantage from the first leg meeting, and head coach Etienne Ndayiragije says despite the advantage, they will approach the match with the required seriousness. The Kenyan League champions held their final training session Saturday morning ahead of the clash.
All you have to do is now is kuenda na kumalizia ile kazi watu walianza last weekend. So vile mnajua game lazima iishe ndio iishe. So it's a first leg and second leg match. So we have to finish up the second leg strongly as much as we started the first leg.
Lazima to make sure kuwa tumeperform kuliko last time. Kwa malengo ni kuqualify, malengo ni kuvuka hii stage. Kwa hiyo tunajua the advantage we have, but tutaingia as if hatuna hiyo advantage ili tuendelee kupush mpaka tumalize filimbi ya mwisho refu.
Record 21-time Kenya Premier League champions Gor Mahia got back to winning ways, beating Sofapaka 2-0 in a league match staged Saturday at the Dandora Stadium here in Nairobi. Ebenezer Adukwa was the host for Kogalo, bagging a brace to seal the win. His first goal came in the 32nd minute before adding another 10 minutes after the breather. Elsewhere, 13-time champions Tusker suffered a second consecutive defeat, going down 2-1 to Sami Pamzo Omolo's Poster Rangers. The results lifted Rangers to the top of the table with 6 points, while Tusker remained rooted at the bottom after losing the opening 2 matches.
Tumeweza kudhibiti mchezo kwa kiwango kikubwa, lakini unajua matokeo ya mpira ni alama 3 muhimu ndio inahesabiwa. Kwa hivyo ni kuhimiza wachezaji wetu waendelee kuweka bidii because hakuna mechi rahisi, kila mechi ni ngumu. Sasa tumepoteza mechi 2 zikifuatana na haikai vizuri.
Ukiangalia hizo bao 2 yenye tumework hard sana tuzipate. Then tukakuja tukashikilia na unapata tulikuwa under lot of pressure because walikuwa wanatusukuma sana, lakini vijana wangu wakakuja kwa istahimilio pressure na tukakuwa organized tukienda mbele na more especially wakati hatuna ball tukizuia.
Kwa Keri Kapaito, sasa Kapaito!
Jackson Mushira defended his title for the third time running after topping the 50-kilometer race in the fourth edition of the Mountain to Mountain Ultra Marathon, which was held Saturday at Narumoru, Nyeri County. Mushira clocked 4 hours, 43 minutes to cross the finish line, beating his last year record by 7 minutes. David Kamau also retained his title as the 30-kilometer undisputed champion. According to organizers, the Ultra Marathon, brought to life by the great marathoner James Wahome, seeks to expand the reach to international levels with a vision akin to replicating South Africa's 90-kilometer ocean to ocean.
Namba moja, alafu nikakupunguza ile limit ile saa yangu nikapunguza na dakika saba.
Hii ni mara tatu yangu kushida hii mountain to mountain, na inanisaidia juu unapata kazi ya mlima. Mimi bado ni mountain guide, inanisaidia kufika Lenana with 7 hours kutoka hapa kwa gate na kurudi.
On the finish line the numbers show nominal growth. I think last year we had 180, today we have about 200, which is very good because there's a very growing challenge. People don't want to repeat it. Some say, let me recover, I come next year.
It's a very unique run, and in between you see different kinds of climactical conditions ranging from the mountain forest to savanna and anything in between.
Kenya's journey at the WBSC Youth Baseball 5 World Cup in Nayarit, Mexico, came to a halt following back-to-back defeats that ended their semi-final dreams at the hands of hosts Mexico after they fell 17-26. Mexico came out swinging, taking the first set with clinical precision, but the young Kenyan side bounced back brilliantly, edging out the hosts in the second set with a dramatic 8-7 win. But the momentum shifted in the third and final set, where Mexico capitalized on key scoring opportunities and powered through to seal the match with an 8-3 victory, sending the home crowd into a frenzy.
The best in the world, right now the best in Africa, so we are up there with the rest. We are going to do a few changes here and there to make sure that it competes well in the upcoming games. We've learned a lot. This was a learning experience. As I said, being the first time, it had to be with its own challenges, but there are good positives to pick from them.
Joseph Chacha won the men's title at the Mangu High School Charity Day Golf Tournament, while Gilbert Macero took the longest drive on hole 18, with Bilha Mudhuni winning in the women's category. At the event held at the Mathaga Golf Club, Evans Kidero bagged the alumni category title with 40 points, ahead of George Weru, who finished second with 38. In the ladies alumni category, Christabel Ochil emerged the winner with 38 points, while Kushi Rajput Jr. settled for second on 37.
Enjoying on the course with people from different years who have been in the school, networking, and also during the charity event trying to raise some money which will go to the bursary fund at school and which will also go to improve some infrastructure, sports infrastructure in the school.
Our idea was to bring together friends and also people who have schooled at Mangu High School in the past, so we can help raise funds towards a noble cause. And so we're really glad it's been a success, and we want to make sure this is an annual event for a worthy cause. Mangu Jishinde Ushinde.
All right, time for myself, Olive Burrows, and Yulan Zale, our sign language interpreter, to bid you adieu. But tonight, I'm winded my you on Diaspora Connect. We have Neville coming up, and tonight he has DJ Eddie, and she says she's not a saint, she's not a sinner, she's just a DJ Eddie spinning. Stay tuned.